or whatever, and then he flips the appropriate switch, and at the end of the week, he knows exactly where his time went. The man is a genius. When I meet with students, and this is, I think, just as appropriate for people in the workplace, I say, what's your schedule? You have a set of fixed meetings every week, and what you have to do is you have to look at those and identify the open blocks where you're going to waste time, and I can tell you're going to waste time just by looking at it. So in this case, you've got a class where you've got a class at a certain point, and then you've got a gap until the next class. So I've identified those here. And the gaps between classes that in this case last an hour or an hour and a half, this is just prime time to be wasted. So what I always taught my students was make up a fake class. The fake class is go to one specific place in the library during that hour, and when you're sitting there with just you in the library and your books, there's a pretty good chance you might actually study. So don't go and hang out with friends for an hour. Just make that a fake class. Make your own little study hall. It's a simple trick, but it's amazing how effective it is when somebody just explicitly does it. When you've got your time journal data, what do you figure out from that? What am I doing that doesn't need to be done? What can someone else do? I love every day sort of saying, what am I doing that I could delegate to somebody else? My sister is again laughing because she knows who that person was in our youth. What can I do more efficiently? And how am I wasting other people's time? When you get good at time management, you realize that it's a collaborative thing. I want to make everybody more efficient. It's not a selfish thing. It's not me against you. It's how do we all collectively get more done? As you push on the time journal stuff, you start to find that you don't make yourself more efficient at work so you can become some sort of uber worker person. You become more efficient at work so you can leave at 5 and go home and be with the people that you love. People call this work-life balance. For the junior faculty, you may have heard of it in some sort of mythical sense, but it is possible. I found that I worked fewer hours after I got married, and I got more done. And I was always fascinated in graduate school that the people who graduated fastest with their PhDs were the people who had a spouse and kids. And I said, how can that be? That's like a built-in boat anchor, right? You know, you got all these other demands on your time, and I'm like a single guy, and I got all the time in the world, and that's the problem. I approach it like I got all the time in the world, so my time isn't precious. When you got a spouse and little kids, your spouse is likely to say things to you like, you better not be in at that grad school more than 40 hours a week, so when you come in, you're not sitting around playing computer games. Not that I ever did that. But when you come in, you're coming in and you're doing work. And I found, like most people, that once I got married and had kids, my whole view of time management really got, I mean, we were playing for real stakes now, because now there are people whose lives are impacted if I'm spending too much time at work. The other thing about time management, it makes you really start to look through a crystalline lens and figure out what's important and what's not. I love this picture. I've blanked out her name, but this says blah, 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 blah. This is a pregnant woman, and it says she is worrying about the effect on her unborn child from the sound of jackhammers. So they're doing construction, and the people here are laughing because they can see that this woman who's so concerned about the jackhammers affecting her unborn child is holding a lit cigarette. You got to get really good at saying, I got to focus my time and energy on the things that matter and not worry about the things that don't. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, and I don't play one on TV, but I'm willing to bet that if I were the fetus, I'd be saying, put the cigarette out, Mom! I can deal with the noise! Alrighty, so in terms of, I want to tell you a little story about effective versus efficient. I actually was going to give this talk a couple of weeks ago, and I talked with Gabe about it, and we were going to come up here because, as a surprise for my wife, her favorite musical group in the whole world is the Police, and has been for a long, long time. They're a wonderful group. And so we said, hey, we're going to drive up to Charlottesville and see them. We managed to get some tickets. And I said, well, honey, as long as we're up there, I promised Gabe a long time ago that I wanted to give my time management talk. And she said, okay, because it's about a 3-hour drive, so it's very efficient to couple these two trips together. And about 2 days later, she said, you know, honey, I know how you are with talks. And before you give one for a couple of days, you start to obsess. And as we talked through it, she said, so we're going to go up, and this couple's time away, we'd gotten a sitter to watch the kids, and this couple's time away is going to be eaten up by you obsessing over and preparing this talk. And I thought about it, and I said, okay, so obviously the right solution is we should keep our couple's time. We'll go up, we'll see the concert, we'll have our time together, and I'll just schedule a different day, and I'll go up on a one-day trip, and I'll do the talk. And she said, wow, that was easy. And I was, right, once you frame it in the right way, and you say, yeah, the cost here is that I have to do the drive a second time, but it turns out I'm doing the drive with my nephew Christopher, and we talk, and my mom, it turns out. So the time wasn't even dead time, so there was no loss at all. But the key thing was we said, it's not about efficiency, it's about effectiveness and best overall outcome. And of course, one of the nice things was that we did get to go to the Police concert, and I really want to thank Gabe and Jim Ayler because we really went to the concert. And my wife was very happy. I'm the guy in the back saying, she's not paying any attention to me today. But it was wonderful. And he is a charming gentleman in person. He is absolutely charming. So let's talk about procrastination. There's an old saying, procrastination is the thief of time. Procrastination is hard. And I have a little bit of an insight here for you. We don't usually procrastinate because we're lazy. Sometimes people rationalize their procrastination. They say, well, gee, if I wait long enough, maybe I won't have to do it. Right? That's true. Sometimes you get lucky. All right? And other people say, gee, if I start on it now, I'm just going to spend all the time on it. If I only give myself the last 2 days, I'll do it in 2 days because that's the work expands to fill the time available, Parkinson's law. That's marginally true. But I think the key balance here is to understand that doing things at the last minute is really expensive. And it's just much more expensive than doing it just before the last minute. So if you're doing something and you can still mail it through the US mail, you have suddenly avoided the, oh my God, I've got to do the whole FedEx thing. Now, I love FedEx. FedEx supports our whole universal habit of procrastination. But it also allows us to get stuff there when it really has to be there in a hurry. So that's a wonderful thing. But I think you have to realize that if you push things right up to the deadline, that's where all the stress comes from. Because now you can't reach people. If somebody is out of the office for just 1 day, your whole plan is upset. So you really have to work hard on this kind of stuff. The other thing is that deadlines are really important. We are all essentially deadline driven. So if you have something that isn't due for a long time, make up a fake deadline and act like it's real. And that's wonderful because those are the deadlines when push comes to shove. You can slip them by a couple of days and it's all right. So they're less stressful. If you are procrastinating, you've got to find some way to get back into your comfort zone. Identify why you're not enthusiastic. Whenever I procrastinate on something, there's always a deep psychological reason. Usually it's I'm afraid of being embarrassed because I don't think I'll do it well, or I'm afraid I'm going to fail at it. And sometimes it involves asking somebody for something. And one of the most magical things I've learned in my life is that sometimes you just have to ask, and wonderful things happen. But you just have to, step out and do that. I won the parent lottery. I have just wonderful parents. And my dad, unfortunately, passed away not too long ago. But this is one of my favorite photographs because my dad was such a smart guy. I could almost never surprise him or impress him because he was just that good. But we were down on a family vacation at Disney World, and the monorails were going by, and we're going to board the monorail. And we noticed that in the front up here in the cabin, I don't know if you can see it in this picture, but there's an engineer who drives the monorail, and there were actually guests up in there with him, which is kind of unusual. My dad and I were talking about that, and I knew, because I've done some consulting for Disney. My dad's saying, oh, they probably have to be special VIPs or something like that. I said, oh, there is a trick. There is a special way you get into that cabin. And he said, really, what is it? And I said, I'll show you. Dylan, come with me. And Dylan, who's the back of his head you can see there, we walk up and I whisper to Dylan, ask the man if we can ride in the front. And we go up to the attendant and the attendant says, why, yes, you can. And he opens the gate and my dad is just like, I said, I told you there was a trick. I didn't say it was hard. And sometimes all you have to do is ask, and it's that easy. Let's talk about delegation. Nobody operates individually anymore. And you can accomplish a lot more when you have help. However, most people delegate very poorly. They treat delegation as dumping. I don't have time to do this, you take care of it. And then they micromanage, and it's just a disaster. The first thing, if you're going to delegate something to a subordinate, is you grant them authority with responsibility. You don't tell somebody, go take care of this, but if you need to spend any money, you've got to come back to me for approval. That's not empowering them. That's telling them you don't trust them. If I trust you enough to do the work, I trust you enough to give you the resources and the budget and the time and whatever else you need to get it done. You give them the whole package. The other thing is delegate, but always do the ugliest job yourself. So when we need to vacuum the lab before a demo, I bring in the vacuum cleaner and I vacuum it. All right? Do the dirtiest job yourself so it's very clear that you're willing to still get the dirt on your hands. Treat your people well. People are the greatest resource, and if you are fortunate enough to have people who report to you, treat them with dignity, respect, and, to sound a little bit corny, the kind of love that they should have from someone who cares about them and their professional development. And for crying out loud, staff and secretaries are your lifeline. Right? If you don't think you should treat them well because it's a decent thing to do, at least treat them well, because if you don't, they will get you. Right? And they will get you good, and you will deserve it, and I will applaud them. Am I giving a talk on time management with Alf Weaver in the audience? Where is Alf? There he is. That's like talking about surviving the Jonestown flood if Noah's in the audience. One of the things that Alf Weaver taught me is, whether it's to a colleague or to a subordinate, if you want to get something done, you cannot be vague. And he said, you give somebody a specific thing to do, a specific date and time. Thursday is not a specific time. Thursday at 3:22 gets somebody's attention. And you give them a specific penalty or reward that will happen if that deadline for that thing is not met. And then he paused and he said, and remember, the penalty or reward has to be for them, not you. Right? I will be screwed over if you don't meet that deadline. Oh, bummer. Right? This is an important point to not get wrong. Challenge people. I've been told that one of the tricks is you delegate until they complain. I don't know about until they complain, but what I've found is that under-delegation is a problem. People are usually yearning for the opportunity to do more. They want to be challenged. They want to prove to you and themselves they can be more capable, so let them. Communication has to be clear. So many times people get upset with their bosses because there's a misunderstanding, and particularly in a time of email, it's so easy to communicate via email. Even if you've had a face-to-face conversation, send a 2-line email just to be specific afterwards. And it's not like we're trying to be all lawyer-like. It's just that, as Judge Wapner said, get it in writing, if you remember the People's Court. And Judge Wapner said, if there isn't a problem, it's not a problem. It didn't take you much time. But if there ever is a problem, well, wait a second, there won't be a problem because there's a written record. And that's the magic. There won't be a confusion because you can't disagree about the written word. Don't give people how you want them to do it. Tell them what you want them to do. Give them objectives, not procedures. Let them surprise you with a way of solving a problem you would never have imagined. Sometimes those solutions are mind-blowing, good or bad. But they're really much more fun than just having them do it the way you would have done it. And you know what? If you're in a university, your job should be to have people smarter than you, i.e. your students, and they will come up with stuff you would never have thought of. The other thing is, tell people the relative importance of each task. I meet so many people who say, oh, my boss is an ogre. They gave me 5 things to do. I'm like, well, did they tell you which one was the most important? Oh, yeah. I guess I could ask that. Knowing that if you have 5 things, which are the ones to get done, is really important, because if you're flying blind, you got a 20% chance of getting them done in the right order. And delegation can never be done too young. Does everyone see the difference in the 2 pictures? This is my daughter, Chloe. I love her to death, but I want her to grow up to be a wonderful person, and I know the sooner she holds her own bottle, the better. Sociology, beware upward delegation. Sometimes you try to delegate and people try to hand it back to you. One of the best things I ever saw was someone who had a secretary trying to say, I can't do this, you'll have to take it back. And he just put his hands behind his back and took a step backwards. And then he waited. And then eventually the secretary said, or maybe I could find this other solution. And he said, that's wonderful. I'm so proud you thought of that. All right? It was an elegant gesture. Reinforced behavior won't be repeated. One of my favorite stories in the 1-Minute Manager is he talks about, did you ever wonder how they got the killer whales to jump through the hoop? If they did it like modern American office managers, they would yell at the killer whale, jump through the hoop! And then every time the killer whale didn't jump through the hoop, they'd hit it with a stick. Right? I mean, this is how we train people in the office place. Read the book if you want to see how they actually do it, because I'm curious. I mean, I know now, but it's really cool how they get them to do it. So